Welcome back to Terms of Service. I'm CNN tech reporter Claire Duffy. All across the country, from Portland to Minneapolis, protests have risen against President Donald Trump's massive immigration crackdown. Amid this attention, many people have shared videos showing ICE agents appearing to photograph or videotape people with their cell phone cameras. Investigative journalists here at CNN reviewed dozens of these videos and found that immigration agents are using facial recognition software on their phones to try to identify people and to try to determine their immigration status. So how does this technology work? What does it mean for people whose status ICE may be trying to assess, and even for those who may come into contact with ICE while protesting or observing their operations? To dig into this, I have Yahya Abu-Ghazaleh here with me today. He works as a reporter-producer on CNN's investigative team. Here's my conversation with Yahya. Welcome to the show, Yahya.
Thanks for having me.
So to start, I just want to ask about what prompted your team to dig into this story in the first place.
Yeah, so in the aftermath of the killing of Renee Good, as video started to circulate online of that incident, one specific video that caught our attention was one where you could see the officer who opened fire and killed Renee Good was filming in one hand right before he pulled his weapon. And so that got us wondering, why was he filming in those moments? What was he taking a photo of or video of? And so we wanted to follow that reporting line and see, was this normal? Was this something that other agents were doing? And we kind of set on this path to figure out what's the deal with agents using their cell phones, because, if you get pulled over by an officer, right, you're typically used to seeing them walk up to you and, wearing their body camera. But if they approached you with a cell phone in hand, you'd probably be a little weirded out and not really sure what they're filming or what that, video is for. Mm-hmm. So we figured we'd just explore what was really going on here.
And talk to me about the process that your team went through to report out this story.
So, as you've probably seen on your social media feeds, the Minneapolis protests have been heavily documented with videos, with people posting photos of their interactions, videos of their interactions with ICE agents, with federal immigration officers. So we really started by just diving in on social media to see where we can find instances of federal immigration officers using their cell phones in the field. And so we very quickly just started collecting and tracking different videos and keeping track of what we're seeing in them, what's the context in which they seem to be using their phones, and what kinds of cameras are they using. Is it a cell phone, a helmet-mounted camera? Is it a professional camera? And so once we started collecting all of these, we looked for the patterns in there to kind of make sense of what was happening with these phones in the field.
Got it. So give us the overview. In these videos where we've seen ICE agents holding their phones up to people's faces, what are they doing there? What did you find?
So in the instances where federal immigration agents were stopping people in the street, they were often approaching them and taking photos of their faces, usually just walking right up to the car or the person on the side of the road and just snapping a photo of their face. And so in between reviewing some of these videos that we were seeing and closely looking at, little shots where you could see the phone screens, we were able to identify what appeared to be an app on their phone and figure out, what is this app and what does it seem like they're using it for.
And what is the app?
So the app is called Mobile Fortify. It was developed by the Department of Homeland Security, and it has been in ICE's use for the last year or so. And the primary purpose of this is, if you are an ICE agent, you can walk up to someone, take a photo of their face, and it will pull from internal federal databases to be able to determine your immigration status and your immigration history.
And are these cell phones government devices, personal devices? Do you know?
We saw all sorts of different cameras that were being used by federal agents in the field. In some instances, they clearly appeared to be government-issued devices. We also saw in multiple videos what appeared to be personal cell phones that were being used in the field. But in terms of the use of facial recognition, those are used through their government-issued phones.
I want to talk a little bit more now about this facial recognition app, Mobile Fortify. How does the app actually work?
So as far as we can understand from the videos that we have seen, an agent just needs to walk up, take a photo of your face, and it runs the scan and returns to them the results of, your immigration history. So from, again, what we can understand about it is that it's pulling from CBP federal databases to identify who this person is and what their immigration status or history is.
And can you give us an example of where you and your team have seen this happen?
There was an incident in Minneapolis where someone was videotaping ICE agents approaching and interrogating him. And at one point you see the ICE agent kind of lift his phone up to his face and say, "Pull your hood off." And, the man filming refuses to pull his hood off. But from what we can tell in the videos, they snapped a photo of his face. And, in the moments you can see the agent's phone screen, we confirmed that app was in fact Mobile Fortify, and it appeared to confirm that person's immigration status for the agents. We saw several other instances from different agents who are using facial recognition apps. One of the agents appeared to be texting another agent asking if they got the facial recognition results. It seems like in the field, this technology is being used on whoever ICE agents and federal immigration agents are coming into contact with to determine their immigration status.
So you mentioned that Mobile Fortify was developed within the Department of Homeland Security. Do we know when it was developed, and did the agency work with any private companies to build this technology?
So as far as we know, this is an internal product to DHS, and ICE has had access to it for the last year. It's not accessible to the public. It's not accessible to third parties. And the actual development of the app was internal to DHS.
Got it. Talk a little bit more about what kind of data the app is using to compare photos of people's faces. And is there any way for people to check if their faces or information are part of whatever database they're using?
So it's actually kind of hard to figure out exactly where they're pulling all of this data from. Like I said, it's not accessible to the public in any transparent way. Last September, a group of senators wrote a letter to the acting ICE director just asking some basic questions about this app, how it works, where is this data going, what's it pulling from. And so there's actually not that much insight to the public as to how that operation actually works. But we do know that it is pulling from the CBP's databases and comparing, the immigration status that it then matches to the individual.
And that's Customs and Border Protection. So presumably, potentially like passport photos and, information about who has entered the country or left the country, that sort of thing.
Yeah, one of the things that you can compare it to is, when you go to the airport and you're going through the security line, oftentimes you have your face scanned by TSA, which you can consent to. There's a notice, you'll probably see it, that they're going to take your photo and you're consenting to your photo being taken. So it's these kinds of services that are the best way to kind of understand how Mobile Fortify is working.
I was going to ask if we have a sense of how accurate the app's facial recognition technology is, but I imagine it's probably challenging to figure that out if there's no transparency, no ability for other lawmakers or researchers to download and test this out, right? Yeah,
and with all facial recognition, this app or otherwise, I think a lot of it comes down to the quality of the photo that you're taking. Ideally, it's a very clear, unobstructed view of your face, not blurry, focused. But just from the videos that we're seeing, oftentimes these agents are taking the photo just pressed up to your windshield, trying to grab, a quick photo of your face. Other times it's, appears to be taken discreetly while the person might not be fully aware. But it's also hard to tell what the percentages are. In terms of the success rate, the accuracy rate. There's been some reporting of certain instances where Mobile Fortify has misidentified someone or the results weren't accurate. So it really depends on the photo, it depends on the technology, which, again, there's not that much insight to the actual operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something that we've talked about on this show before is the fact that broadly, obviously we can't speak to this specific app, but broadly, facial recognition technology has been found to be less accurate in identifying correctly women and people of color. And you have to imagine that people of color are probably a significant target of these efforts to apply this technology. I wanted to ask, sort of on the flip side, are there potential benefits of Mobile Fortify for people who are coming into contact with ICE agents? Like if the old process relied on fingerprinting or bringing people into local field offices, Is this potentially reducing the number of citizens or lawful immigrants who are being wrongfully detained?
So officials that we spoke to actually described the app as, quote, efficient is the word that they used. And so to your point, before Mobile Fortify, it was a sluggish process where if you did detain someone, you had to rely on fingerprinting, taking them down to the station and running those results. Whereas now it is a photo of someone's face and you run those results fairly quickly and you get something workable. So as far as the benefits of this, it does turn what is a sluggish process into a more efficient process. But of course, critics of this technology will raise the question of, is the efficiency worth surveillance and the accuracy of this technology and where all of it's going?
Part of what you found in this reporting is that some of the photos, some of the videos that federal agents are capturing is used as content. Talk me through that piece of it a little bit. Where is that getting posted? What is that for?
If you have been on social media in the last year or so since the second Trump administration came in, you've probably noticed these videos that the ICE social media accounts, the DHS social media accounts are constantly posting, short clips sometimes of someone being handcuffed and walked and detained into the car, or these very elaborate, almost like highlight reels that are edgy and produced with music that more or less try to show these, what seem to be hardcore operations unfolding across the U.S. And so as we dug into this and we spoke to former DHS officials and others who are familiar with the space, what we found is there has been a lot of pressure coming from the White House to pump out as much social media content from these operations in the field.
Hey, me again. I just want to say we reached out to DHS for comment on this episode. Here's what a spokesperson told us in an email. Quote, Mobile Fortify is a lawful law enforcement tool developed under the Trump administration to support accurate identity and immigration status verification during enforcement operations. It operates with a deliberately high matching threshold and queries only limited CBP immigration datasets. Its use is governed by established legal authorities and formal privacy oversight, which set strict limits on data access, use, and retention. Mobile Fortify has not been blocked, restricted, or curtailed by the courts or by legal guidance. It is lawfully used nationwide in accordance with all applicable legal authorities. End quote. DHS did not provide a more specific response to a question about Mobile Fortify's accuracy or about policies regarding the storage and use of video content captured by agents in the field. Okay, now back to my conversation with Yahya. This footage is being captured, as you said, mostly on cell phones, which I think might strike people as strange because for years now, body cameras have been part of many law enforcement officers' uniforms. They allow them to operate hands-free, which, from an outside perspective, maybe seems safer in some of these confrontational situations. Do we know why ICE agents have been opting for cell phone cameras over body cameras?
So one of the key things that I think is just worth remembering in the timeline of things is that when the second Trump administration came in, they revoked a Biden-era administration order that mandated body cams for federal immigration agents. So when they revoked that order, you no longer had to wear a body cam if you're an ICE agent. What replaces them is cell phone footage. They can take it for any number of reasons, some of which we've discussed, which is social media content. But oftentimes it's in place of documenting their actions. And some law enforcement experts that we spoke to raised some serious questions about the safety of this. I mean, body cams are primarily there because they're hands-free. They leave the officer's hands both available. If they need to draw their weapon, they can have both hands on the weapon. But if you're relying on a cell phone to document a tense situation or things are escalating and you have a phone camera in your hand, for a lot of law enforcement experts, that could pose some dangers. And if it's to replace body cams, which are there to document the instance in the first place and either justify the officer's actions in court or hold them accountable to the public, cell phone footage is now being used in its place.
our colleague Elena Treen asked this question, I think, in a White House press briefing recently, where we've seen these sort of diverging stories about what happened in the case of the killing of Renee Good and of Alex Preddy, where federal officials are painting it one way. The videos that we've seen from bystanders and witnesses seem to tell a slightly different story. And she asked this good question of like, well, why don't they just have body cameras? Then there would be sort of documentation of the perspective of the federal officials and workforce. It sounds like there's been a change now to this policy, or change is coming.
Yeah, on February 2nd, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem announced that effective immediately, they're going to be deploying body cams to all agents in Minneapolis, and that rollout's going to be expanded nationwide. So these body cams are coming back to these agents working in the field, and I imagine it's because of a lot of the pressure that has come out of some of these high-profile incidents where people are looking at video that is being taken by bystanders and comparing that to the narrative that is put out about what happened and how it unfolded. And so you imagine this body cam issue is filling a need here in terms of documenting each and every interaction.
When it comes to the photos and videos that ICE agents are taking on cell phones, is there any consistent policy around when officers should film or what happens to that content?
So that's actually one of the interesting parts of this is, look, when you think about body cams, that's a very centralized system where footage is tracked, it's available to be requested by the public, it's released. It's, a very thorough system that is meant to maintain accountability. When it comes to things like cell phone footage, from people we've spoken to, there's no retention requirement, for example, on footage that is shot on your personal cell phone. It's unclear that there's even a system in place to track and archive and document the videos that are just taken on a phone in the first place. The cell phone videos don't have as much of a coherent policy that governs the retention, the tracking, and the archiving, which poses an issue because from a certain instance, you might not know, is this all of the available footage that we have? When did they start recording? When did they finish recording? And some experts that we spoke to say that leaves room for the potential manipulation of an incident based on the selective video that's available or released.
And if you're someone who is videoed or your photo is taken by ICE agents, whether it's because you were at a protest or engaging with them as a bystander, or if you're someone who they've come up to try to do the facial recognition technology on, like, do we know where that footage is going, how long it's being stored, what they might do with that down the road?
So we know that the photographs that are being taken in terms of facial recognition technology is retained by ICE for an extended period of time, at least from the document that we reviewed from last year. I believe they retain it for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
At least. But again, it does come back to the lack of transparency here, which is a key issue. If you do have your photo taken, you aren't necessarily aware of where it's going and how it's being used. You just know that it's being retained in some way by, ICE and DHS.
And what is DHS saying about all of this? Like, do they have some kind of policy in place around the use of this technology or cell phone videos more broadly?
When it comes to facial recognition, DHS told CNN that they firmly stand by this technology. It's not breaking any laws. It is not contradicting any court orders. And as far as cell phone video and cell phone footage, that also just seems to be less of a coherent space in terms of governing and policy, especially when it comes to oversight of what is being taken and where it's going.
DHS has also said basically that these videos can help justify their actions, show the American people what's happening. Do we have any sense of whether this is accomplishing that goal at all?
The critics of this filming in the field using cell phones will tell you that's what body cams are for. The idea of justifying their actions and holding them to account. You have a safe system in place that allows you to know when the body cam started recording and when it ended, and you have, a complete version of events. And so as far as justifying their actions, I know there are some incidents where this cell phone footage is being used in court to support an agent's version of events. So as part of one case in which the U.S. Attorney's Office in North Carolina released this footage, an immigration agent was recording as they chased a vehicle, and the fleeing man was charged for assault for allegedly ramming the agent's cars. But the video that emerged in court actually appeared to show the driver trying to avoid the agents and recorded one agent saying, quote, "Take him out. You got to smash your car up on this." And the judge ended up later dismissing the charge against the driver. And so you're seeing these instances where the cell phone footage is being used in court. But again, it comes back to this point where if body cams are in use, there already is a system in place for that. And if it's selective cell phone footage, it's not always as thorough or comprehensive as what you might get from several body cams from the same incident.
You also noted that DHS has said that Mobile Fortify has not been blocked by any court orders. Do we know if anyone has taken legal action to try to stop this?
So we know from a lawsuit that Illinois has sued and alleged that the indiscriminate use of Mobile Fortify violates the residents' rights in Illinois. And so a lot of questions are still to be answered in terms of, how this technology is being used and whether it's being lawfully deployed.
Are people given the option to have their face scanned in an encounter with ICE? Like, could you say no?
The internal document that we reviewed last year, it sheds some light on how ICE agents approach you with the cameras and how it's in line with what we've been seeing in the videos. So in the document, it says, quote, "ICE does not provide the opportunity for individuals to decline or consent to the collection and use of biometric data/photograph collection." And that matches up with what we're seeing in the field. They're often just approaching you and taking the photo of your face. They're not telling you why they're doing it. And within, minutes, they're running the results of that scan. So we have seen instances where people have expressed that they don't want the photo of their face taken, but that doesn't appear to have stopped them in terms of taking the photos themselves. And it's an interesting contrast with, the comparison I drew earlier when you're going through TSA and you're being informed that a photo is being taken of your face. It's not playing out the same way for ICE agents in the street who don't even have to give you the opportunity to consent or deny. They'll just take the photo.
Are there avenues for people who, if Mobile Fortify incorrectly identifies their immigration status, are there avenues for them to contest that? Have you seen that happen?
It's really unclear. We've seen plenty of people get detained, U.S. citizens as well, on different allegations. But if you have reason to believe that you were misidentified, the facial recognition scan results were faulty, at that point, I think the avenues for you are getting in touch with an attorney and raising that specific issue. But as far as your interaction with the ICE agents and raising that yourself, as we have seen from the last several months, there are just no specific guarantees in terms of how that will play out. And oftentimes attorneys do need to get involved and raise these specific points in hopes of, protecting their clients' rights.
Mm-hmm. For people who are showing up to protests, what do you think that they should know about ICE agents filming or photographing people?
This is the first time you're both seeing protesters en masse filming agents and filming their operations. And now you're seeing the agents themselves filming back and, taking their phones out and taking pictures of faces and taking videos. And so as far as the protesters themselves, this is a new reality, it seems like, just on the streets in terms of immigration operations. And I think for every individual, you're well within your rights to ask, are you taking a photo of my face? Is this for facial recognition? But I think the important thing is to be aware, to know why these agents are filming in the first place. It can be scary. It can be intimidating when someone's coming at you with a camera, especially if they're a federal immigration agent. But the more that you're aware of why they're filming, what it could potentially be used for, it allows you as a protester, observer, a bystander to kind of make an informed decision as to whether you want to attend the protest, observe, or even go out that day.
Well, Yahya, thank you so much. I think this is such an important topic, and I'm eager to continue following your reporting as you do more on this. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated the conversation.